Hi, I've helped over 45 people break into consulting and get jobs at PwC, KPMG, Bain & Company, and Boston Consulting Group. Many of my students were software engineers, financial analysts, or students in college and wanted to break into consulting, but were scared of all the PowerPoints, frameworks, analysis, and market research they would have to do and didn't exactly know how to do it. Having been a consultant myself and promoted all the way up to partner of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, I was able to help a lot of my students understand what HR recruiters and project managers are looking for when they're recruiting new talent. That's how I was able to help people like Jonathan and AJ break into consulting and many others. But I'm someone who believes that showing action is far greater than words. So for the rest of this video, I will be explaining to you the top 3 frameworks I learned and I teach my students to break into consulting.
So we're going to begin with a framework that's used by consultants often called Porter's Five Forces. It's a commonly used framework to determine if entering a market is worth their time for the client or for the consultant, along with if the client's market is all of a sudden going to get a lot of competition going forward. So we start with threats of new entrants, which basically means is there going to be a lot of competition coming up soon? A high barrier of entry would mean that it's very difficult to get in. So Northrop and a lot of defense contractors have to get regulations and licenses with the government. So there's a high barrier compared to e-commerce, which has a low barrier, meaning a lot of people can enter because you can just set up a Shopify store really quickly and enter the market. Then we have a high supplier power versus low supplier power based on supplier bargaining power. Basically, every market has inputs and outputs. You put in, gold, you get out jewelry, and you sell that for cash. And so some markets have a lot of supplier power, basically the person giving the, resources. In the case of AI, NVIDIA has a lot of supplier power. They're the only ones creating the AI chips that are used by every other company, so they can really price them at anything. They're selling some chips at 25,000 a chip. Now, some other industries have low supplier power. You can get electricity from a lot of different companies. So electricity is relatively cheap compared to other industries that are, supplying power in different ways. Then we have internal competition. Basically, in the market already, the companies that are already competing in it, how big is the competition? When you look at monopolies such as Google, you see that their market of search engines, there isn't really much of a market to compete with. Google is there and it dominates. It owns 95% of the search engine market. And DuckDuckGo and Bing make up a very small percentage. So there isn't a lot of internal competition. However, you compare that to shoes, there's going to be Nike, Uniqlo, Adidas, Reebok, and a bunch of other shoe companies. And so there's a lot of rivalry already inside. It doesn't need to worry about new entrants because it's already worrying about the big companies it's fighting internally. Then we have threats of substitutes. Essentially, if you're a coffee shop, you don't just worry about other coffee shops. You also worry about energy drinks, tea, making coffee at home, getting a good night's rest of sleep, and so those are going to be substitutes. For example, in transportation, there's a lot of different ways to get from point A to point B. There's Tesla like companies where you're buying cars. There's Amtrak like companies where you're having train rides. There's always bike companies or your own legs to walk to one from one destination to another. However, when you look at travel industry, there's not many, substitutes. You're eventually going to either use a plane, a jet, a ship, or a hot air balloon. So you don't have to worry too much of how you're going to go internationally. Then, for customer bargaining power, which is the final part of the forces, there's going to be essentially the idea that can the customer control the price that they're going to pay for the product? Is it very commoditized? So when you look at water, it doesn't really matter if your water is Fiji versus, Aquafina. At the end of the day, the price does matter. The cheapest water usually gets sold the most. So customers have a lot of power. However, you compare that to Stanley cups, which are known to be, industrious and have a great brand image, and only one company can really sell them. So they can sell, a generic cup. So, a great way to practice these frameworks is actually to do real business case studies by taking a real business and putting it into this framework. Now, we'll use Apple for this example. So, for Porter's Five Forces, we'll start with threats of new entrants. Apple operates in the consumer electronics market. It sells phones, laptops, tablets, and which this industry has significant barriers to entry. These include high capital costs to do research and development, to build the product, and to market it. It also requires advanced technology, so you need to hire a bunch of engineers. And it requires strong brand loyalty. A phone is a very personal item, so people won't just buy any phone from anyone. And lastly, it requires an ecosystem. Samsung, Google, Huawei, and Apple all have ecosystems of different products, softwares, and services that once you're part of, it makes your whole life easier, but it makes it harder to leave. And so for a new company to enter and compete with Apple, it's going to be very difficult. So there's not much threat for new entrants because there's a high barrier to entry. Then we'll look into bargaining power of suppliers. Now, even though Apple is a pretty big company, and they still need stuff like processors, screens, and batteries. And batteries you can get from a lot of different companies, or maybe even screens, but processors are mainly made by companies like TSMC. And so what happens is they do have some suppliers that have a lot of power. And this is in fact why the government, United States government, has released the CHIPS Act, which they're trying to get companies like Intel to build chips in United States so that they don't rely on a different country for most of their phones chips in general. And so Apple does have certain suppliers that have significant power. However, they do try to mitigate this risk or lower it so that they can not have to depend on one part of the supply chain more than others. And they do this by, building a diverse supplier base and investing in supply chain innovation so that they're vertically integrated. So they make every single part, they market, they sell, they own the stores, and they're trying to make profit from every single part. Then we have bargaining power of buyers. Now, Apple is known for having a very strong brand loyalty, and once people are part of the ecosystem, it's very hard to leave. But with growing number of alternatives in smartphones, tablets, and laptops, with similar pricing, similar features, and sometimes even lower pricing while still having the same level of quality, it's becoming harder for Apple to maintain their premium pricing. Now, Apple has been differentiating themselves through design, having a better ecosystem. Generally, when you survey people, they do say they have a better ecosystem, and brand prestige, because that didn't just go away all of a sudden. And so they're able to maintain some control over buyer power, but that's going away. And you can actually notice this because Apple has started offering more and more discounts compared to their legacy of like never offering discounts ever. Then we have threats of substitutes. So just like I mentioned, coffee shops have to worry about energy drinks or tea, Apple does too. Now they have competitors like Samsung or Microsoft, but they also have competitors like Oculus Rift with the AR glasses or Fitbits with like the watches. And so what Apple has been doing is actually instead of making these indirect competitors through substitutes, they've been just directly competing with them. So they built the Vision Pro, they built the Apple Watch, and so they're trying to counteract these threats of substitutes by entering the industry and actually just trying to beat the substitute down as well. So Apple has been focusing on product innovation, seamless integration, and just creation of a unique user experience. And then lastly, we have industry rivalry. It's well known that the phone market is a very competitive market. And so Apple has to compete with Samsung, Google, Huawei, and they have to really continue innovating, which is good for people like you and I that are going to be buying iPhones or buying phones in general. We want the best technology for the cheapest price, with like the highest levels of security and all. But that also means Apple is having to spend more money on marketing. They've been competing recently with Google to become the main browser. So you can actually see these billboards everywhere where they talk about how Safari has better privacy than Google Chrome. And then they also have to have better pricing strategies. Apple is known for having different price levels. So they try to make it so every price of a new product and upgrade kind of make you want to buy the next one. And eventually you're buying the highest end item from Apple. However, Apple's strong brand and loyal customer base has made it so they don't have to worry too much about rivalry, and it is why they're one of the most, valuable companies in the world, and they haven't really been toppled in terms of consumer electronics in like at least the past 2 decades.
If this has been helpful so far, I would like to let you know that I built a full course covering everything you need from A to Z to break into consulting. It even has over 100 business case studies to practice, an AI interviewer, and many other templates and checklists that you can use to optimize your resume, your LinkedIn, and build a consulting network.
Now, we will be discussing the SWAT framework. This stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is one of the most well known frameworks in consulting, but I'm going to still explain it in depth because I want you to have a strong understanding of the fundamentals. Now let's jump into strengths. One can be strong brand reputation, something like what Apple has, which I discussed earlier, that makes it so that customers keep coming back no matter what the product is. Then there's patented technology. It makes it so that the competitors can't come in and compete in those product categories. IBM, for example, is a very old company that hasn't done much innovation in the past few years. However, they own 600,000 patents, which makes it so that they're still worth tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. And then there's just lots of money. Google has a search engine that makes them so much money and has a monopoly of 95% of the market that they just rack in cash. And so they don't really have to improve the search engine. They can just buy out competitors or buy out other industries completely and just become a dominant player as a whole. Then we have to discuss weaknesses. This can be high levels of debt, and this can really be a big problem for companies during recessions, in which case they need to have a lean machine, they have to have capital, and they need to be able to pay off their debts quickly. Companies like Lehman Brothers fell apart in the recession of 2008 because they had a lot of debt. Then there's limited products to sell. Now, companies right now like Stanley Cup make a lot of money, even though they only really have one to two products. However, eventually there's product fatigue, which essentially means that customers that would buy your product have all bought your product and no longer really need it. How many Stanley Cups are you really going to have? So Stanley will eventually need to buy or make other products or buy other companies and then offer more products to their customers so they have something still to sell. And then lastly is one-time sales. This goes into what I discussed about Stanley Cups, and is the idea that most good companies have reoccurring sales, in the sense that Netflix has a subscription that you buy in and you pay every month for many, many years. Coca-Cola, even though it doesn't have a subscription, it becomes part of your day-to-day life, and you buy one every week, every month, or when you're going out. And so one-time sale companies, which might be selling, a very niche rocking chair, for example, have a big problem because there's only so many people that will buy that rocking chair, and eventually they sell to everyone. And now they don't have a company after maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 1 year. Then we have opportunities. This can be market growth. There's this symbol you might have seen, CAGR, CAGR, but in reality, what that just means is compounded annual growth rate. Some industries grow by 2, 3%, and they just meet inflation. That might be something like insurance markets, which have existed for so many years. There is not that much like rapid growth. But then there's blockchain markets that grow at 50% a year. And so when you enter an industry or when you're part of an industry, you need to understand how quickly is the market growing, how quickly are customers coming in, and competitors coming in. Then there are technological advancements. Sometimes a new technology can make it so you can beat out a monopoly. OpenAI, for example, is a class A threat, according to Google, because people are going to ChatGPT or Cloud or different AIs to ask them questions rather than the Google search engine. And so all of a sudden, a search engine didn't beat Google. However, AI beat Google. And that's a completely different product. And so that came from technological advancements and was an opportunity for OpenAI and Microsoft to beat Google. And then there's regulation shifts. Oftentimes, the government will force industries or companies or organizations to do something, and from that, companies can be born. Recently, the CMS made it so that every healthcare organization, like insurances, pharmacies, and hospitals, have to release their negotiated prices for different insurance plans, operations, or simply drugs. Now, that has allowed many companies like Turquoise Health to be born and build a product suite around this and build different services and softwares that companies and normal customers can use. And so a huge billion-dollar industry has been born because of a regulation shift. CMS is a government organization after all. And lastly, we have threats. This could be increased competition. All of a sudden, a new industry can get a lot of competition and make it very competitive. For example, in the crypto market, there were for a long time just Bitcoin and Ethereum. But during the crypto boom of 2020, when everyone was staying at home, all of a sudden a bunch of crypto coins were made, and there was a lot of competition in that industry. There also could be a recession. When there's a lot less money in the market, there's a lot less money in your pockets, you're going to go out and spend less. And that can be a big problem for companies because they will earn less, and that can become a cycle where they earn less, they pay their employees less, the employees have less money to spend, and all of a sudden it looks really, really bad. And lastly, shifts in consumer behavior. Sometimes there's just a trend going on, and eventually people shift away from the trend. For example, Supreme used to be able to sell all their products very quickly. Now, nothing bad happened with Supreme's brand. They didn't go under a lot of flack. However, the whole hype beast model eventually kind of died down. Consumers didn't care about getting Supreme. They still cared about luxury, so they still bought Louis Vuitton. However, Supreme as a company started dying down and lost a lot of their valuation. Now we'll discuss Nike in terms of a SWOT analysis. So let's jump into their strengths. Nike's strength is that it's globally recognized as a brand. Almost anywhere in the world, you will know what a Nike shoe is. It has innovative product lines, as in the shoes help you run faster, jump higher. This is actually proven through research. They have strong marketing capabilities, and this is primarily because they have an iconic advertising campaign. They market themselves as greatness. They don't market themselves as a shoe brand. They show athletes doing incredible feats, LeBron James making a bucket, or Usain Bolt when he was selling Puma shoes or Reebok shoes. He would run and win those competitions in the Olympics, and he would be able to prove that when he's wearing those shoes, he's able to achieve greatness. So people associated those shoes and himself with greatness. And so Nike's amazing marketing capabilities and innovative product lines, along with its vast distribution network, makes it so that it is very difficult to beat in the market. These strengths allow Nike to price itself higher than its competitors, even if it's offering a similar product, and make more profit, which is the goal of most businesses at the end of the day. Now, let's jump into their weaknesses. One of Nike's weaknesses could be its dependence on third party manufacturers. Nike has caught a lot of flack for how they treat their workers in China or Vietnam, and it has made it so they get boycotted and lose out on a lot of money. Additionally, Nike faces a lot of competition both on online front and on retail. And so when Nike tried to switch to online, they actually lost a lot of money because their efforts were, in vain. They didn't actually understand how the e-commerce market worked. And so they're starting to get a lot more competition as building e-commerce stores is becoming better and easier. And D2C, which is direct to consumer brands, are beginning to thrive in the market. And that's harming their brand image and customer loyalty. Then there are opportunities. Nike has several opportunities, such as expanding into emerging markets, selling to countries like China and India, which haven't bought Nike shoes for the most part, leveraging digital platforms, like actually making e-commerce work for once, and then capitalizing on the growing trend of leisure wear. So kind of going away from shoes and seeing can they get into gym shirts and compete against companies like Gymshark. And Nike is also able to explore, sustainable and eco-friendly product lines, which companies like H&M have proven to be a really profitable category. And then this way, they're able to respond to the increasing consumer demands and make more profit at the end of the day. And that's an opportunity they can push for. And then lastly is threats. Nike faces several threats. It's becoming easier and easier to start an e-commerce brand, and most people don't care about the retail version of your company. There's also companies like Adidas that are making a massive comeback, Under Armour that's making a massive comeback with Steph Curry, and emerging brands all over the place. There's also an economic downturn in terms of the fact that most people aren't really looking for really expensive shoes anymore, despite running clubs becoming more prominent and such. They're looking for more budget-friendly shoes. And ethical fashion is becoming a bigger deal, getting your clothes sourced from the right locations with workers that were treated fairly. And people are really looking into this, and Nike isn't necessarily on the right side of history for this one. And so this is a great way to understand a SWOT analysis and really see through the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Lastly, we're going to cover the McKinsey 7S model, which is a model used by management consultants often and especially in McKinsey. And each one of these components are really easy to understand with analogies, and we'll cover those later as well. Now, we're going to begin with strategy. Most companies aren't trying to be around for just 5 to 10 years. They want to be around for the next 100 years. So they have to position themselves with a clear strategy of understanding what their inputs will be and what their desired output will be. And then they actually follow the strategy out. So, in the case of how the whole world is turning digital, you want to dominate the digital ecosystem through innovation and data driven decision making. You want to be able to boil down which decision you make based on numbers, which you get from your customers, your landing page, your website, your ads, whatever it is. But you want to be able to use numbers which are facts at the end of the day. Then you want to have a structure that is matrix organized focused with clear divisions and cross functional teams. Oftentimes, companies grow and they get bloat, which basically means they become too bureaucratic and innovation slows and they eventually die. Google is known to be very bureaucratic, even though it's a tech company. That's why it's losing out on a lot of market share. However, companies like Amazon are known to be very lean, despite being very, very big. This is actually because Jeff Bezos, when he founded the company, focused on making every company team so small that it could be fed with just two pizzas. It was called the two pizza theory. Additionally, he made it so that each team would only communicate with the other teams by using computer program, which made it so that each team had to have clear inputs and clear outputs. Then we have systems, which need to have robust IT infrastructure, data-driven decision-making, and performance monitoring. Now, what makes McDonald's so great? It's the fact that a 16-year-old can come into a store, can be trained in 3 weeks to make the same burger that's made nationwide or worldwide, and sell it, and it'll probably be about the same level of taste and quality. That's because they have a really robust system. They really practice exactly how to train, exactly how to build out their, systems and procedures, and even the layout of their kitchens. And so if you have a great system, you can move from one employee to another and not have to worry about, is there going to be a loss of intellect or loss of technology if one employee decides to leave or retire. Next, we have shared values. A lot of companies fall apart because they forget what values they stood for. Lehman Brothers, for example, from the 2008 recession that fell apart, forgot that they were focused on providing great wealth management to people, and they started looking out for greed, and eventually that led to the company's downfall. At the end of the day, a company is there because it wants to provide value to people, and you can't do that by not providing value to your employees too. Or even customers get affected by your values. So you want to have commitment to innovation, to providing the best service, to being customer centric, and having ethical business practices. At the end of the day, a bad company can cause a lot of damage, and eventually those types of companies go away. Then we have style. It's about how you have leadership, how you grow leadership, how do you communicate and collaborate. Many companies that used to be very bureaucratic and be all about the manager telling the employee what to do have started becoming horizontally hierarchical, which basically means that you can approach senior managers even and have a normal communication, remembering that everyone is human. Goldman Sachs is known for going from vertical hierarchy of where the senior manager never talks to the incoming analyst to now making it so that any analyst can approach any senior manager and speak to them. Then we have staff. You want to attract the top talent with continuous development and a focus on diversity. Meta is really well known for having the best talent in all of Silicon Valley. This is because they recruit from around the world. They have an amazing diversity, inclusivity team, and they focus on helping people grow and learn and taking talent from anywhere they see it. So you have people that have founded multi-million dollar companies now working for Meta, not because they were bought in and have to work for them, but actually choosing to work for Meta because the talent and the community and the environment is just so amazing. And you can only do that if you really focus on providing your employees values. That you believe in and providing them value in terms of compensation and the bonuses that they might get. And then finally, skills. You want to have expertise in AI and new technologies like cloud technology or search algorithms and innovation. At the end of the day, every company is going to have to learn how to integrate technology into their day to day work. And these skills can transfer to other things as well. If you're a roofer, you're going to need to know the best way to roof. If you're a plumber, you're going to need to know the best way to do plumbing. And so it comes down to really building up your skills and making your service and product as amazing as possible, even if there's not that much competition. Now we're going to cover how McKinsey's 7S model can be thought of as through an analogy. When you look at strategy, you can see that it can be thought of as a blueprint for a large building. The blueprint outlines the structure, the design, and materials required to construct the building, and it ensures that it stands strong and serves its intended purpose. When you look at structure, you can see it as a football team where each player has a specific position and role. The team structure, how the players are arranged on the field, determines how effectively they can work together to achieve their goal of winning the game. Then, if you look at skills, you can see it as consider skills as the tools in a craftsman's toolbox, and the quality and variety of tools available determine the craftsman's ability to create high quality work. If you look at staff, you can think of them as players on a sports team. The skills, training, and morale of each player contribute to the team's overall performance and success. If you look at style, you can think of that as a classroom where the teacher's style is what you're looking for, whether it's authoritative or collaborative or laissez-faire, which means anyone can do anything, affects how students learn and participate. Similarly, leadership style influences how employees engage and perform at work. And then you can look at systems as essentially a circulatory system in a body. Just as blood circulates to keep the body functioning, systems ensure that information and resource flow efficiently through the organization, keeping it operational. And then lastly, shared values, probably the most important of all. You want to consider shared values as the compass of a ship's crew. No matter the conditions at sea, the compass ensures that everyone on on the ship is aligned in their direction and purpose. If you don't have a good compass, you can have the best ship, but you will likely drown.
I hope you enjoyed learning about the top 3 frameworks my students have used to break into PwC, KPMG, and Bain and Company. Now, if you would like to keep learning more, I've made over 44 modules in terms of how to break into consulting and become part of the top 1% of consultants. Additionally, I've made flashcards and business case studies that you can practice so that no interview question is going to be new to you. I've even added resume templates and LinkedIn optimization checklists and made completely new softwares that are worth hundreds of dollars that you can have for completely free. I mean that, $0 down. And this course is valued at over $3,000.
So if you want to know exactly how to break into 100% money back guarantee and bunch of bonus from softwares to checklists, buy the course and break and follow your